If you look within and use your imagination, there's this very subtle sense within everyone, especially today in this modern world, in this kind of society that we live in. There's this sense of creating something or building something. And we can see it internally as all the images of our life. Ambitious atmosphere it has within us. And it grips us without us even knowing it. And it all takes its own form according to our karma, according to our personality, according to who we are. Sometimes it looks like what the families or the parents tell us to do, or what friends tell us is best for us financially, or what is cool, or all of our dreams and ambitions. Sometimes in Gnosis, students, because of our mind, our ego, maybe some fanaticism or maybe some religious or spiritual ambition, we try to look at this too judgmentally or condemn it. So what I'm saying is, or what I'm talking about, is this sense of building something externally, whether it's a career, whether you want to become a priest or something, or you want to become an artist, a musician, or some kind of business. Everyone, if you ask them, is working towards something, whether it's becoming a good mother, becoming a good father, or perhaps they're in university. Of course, that's a popular and obvious one. We're working towards something to build something. And we all get easily identified with that, of course, because what can we all see? The physical world, our material world. All we can see is our own body, our own personality, and the images, the representations, and the memory of our life. And we get quickly identified with this. Actually, it's very hard to not identify with this, because as soon as we even wake up or open our eyes, we're not really living in the reality, as present as we could be. We can close our eyes and see the images and the dreams that we have, and we like that. It's very amusing and fun. It promises some kind of happiness, but it's clouding our eyes to actually living how we're meant to be in accordance with our nature, our true nature, our being. So it's different for everyone. The image that comes to mind for me is, or what I dreamt about a lot when I was a little kid, was, you could say I was a bit of an ambitious child, because when I was very young, I would dream of building my own spaceship. This was an amazing dream that I had when I was a child. I would dream of somehow getting the money to build my own spaceship and imagine what it would be like to fly upwards out of the atmosphere in space and feel what it was like to be in space. Maybe see some aliens and planets and the moon. And of course, externally, this manifests in humanity. For example, well, I won't name the organizations, but the obvious ones, right? And there is a sense in humanity that accepts this. We have this inherent spiritual sense. We feel that it's right. That there is this sense for us to go out and explore space externally. But what humanity doesn't see is the absurdity of actually physically going out into space and doing that externally. Of course, here in second chamber, we should comprehend the teaching of the external is a manifestation of the internal. And if we achieve that internally, we really achieve the exploration of human space and of the space of divinity. It's clear that externally this would be achieved very quickly, much quicker than humans have been trying vainly for many years to go out into space. So the point of that message is everyone is trying to achieve something externally. The most popular spiritual, or you could say pseudo-spiritual teachings is the law of attraction. I want to manifest this and that. I want to have all of this and that. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but there is inherently misunderstood comprehension about that. That if you put primary emphasis on achieving externally and put primary emphasis on the efforts externally, it's going to be very difficult to achieve that. And probably because you hold the desire for that, it probably won't happen. This applies to spiritual and material ambition. I want to be this kind of Gnostic and awakened and all of this, but we're holding on to it too much instead of actually living in the reality step by step, day by day, moment by moment, breath by breath, right? Just being here and now. So we have this teaching of essentially don't be mechanical or put as much effort as we can to not be mechanical. And one way we could describe that is when we want to put efforts to achieve something externally, but we're not doing the internal work for that. It should be the other way around. We're doing inverted efforts. It should be that we achieve the state of being internally, comprehend it, live it truthfully, not acting, but be it in our heart, in our three brains, right? In the body, in the heart, in the mind. And then externally, it would be much easier to achieve that because we would see the obstacles that stop us from achieving that. So when we try to achieve something, whether it's a career, whether it's self-improvement, doing the work, really trying to dissolve our egos, why does it need this effort and this internal focus first, primarily? Well, as it said, our level of being is a reflection of our life, or our life is a reflection of our level of being. If we don't comprehend our level of being and what it manifests, or we don't understand how the way we have lived and how we think and how our emotions affect us, then, well, we won't see the causes and why our whole life is the way it is. But if we really look internally and we really comprehend our way of being, the implications of what we think, our words, what we say, our actions, not just to other people, but most importantly in private and to ourselves, our personal relationship with others, with ourselves, our beliefs, what we do in private, the integrity of ourselves. This most affects everything that we want to achieve. And I don't mean ambitiously, as in the mind or the ego wants to achieve something, but the actual mission of each of our souls, our own being, our particular individual self has a particular mission, a particular goal. Everyone senses that. Just as I said, everyone has their own little or big ambitions, desires, things that they're working on, that they sense a path to go towards. There may be some ego mixed in there, but ultimately if the person is following their path, following their heart, ultimately this is actually setting them on gradually towards the path of their own being, aligning themselves with more and more gradually with living a life and living in a way of being that is aligned with their monad or their higher self, their being. A gradual process, of course. As I said in the beginning, it's very difficult to sense this because we need to create like a tension, or I meant a space tension, right? We need to create tension. But I also said we have to create attention, as in awareness, right? But tension against reality, or the reality that we have been served by our own minds. That's why we have that beautiful phrase, or that prayer, or that mantra, which is great to do in the morning. As soon as we wake up, we are filled with all the memories of the dreams that we had and all the future things that we have to do. We are living like sleeping. We're living like we have virtual reality headsets on. That as soon as we wake up, images, everything that I need to do today. It's great to wake up and say, I don't identify with anything in life. I don't identify with these images. I don't identify with these mental representations. We open our eyes and feel life, feel reality. And get in touch with the feeling too, not just the thoughts, to get out of this sense of mundane, this mundane feeling of life, the everyday life. Maybe a bit moody too, miserable. It's a mistake that even advanced Gnostic students can make. That we wake up every day and think, I've got to kill all these egos. I've got to do all these practices. I'm not meditating enough. But this is all part of the trickster of the ego, the deception of Satan, right? Of the I, of the ego. And really, when we're really following the path, there should be not a sense of mundane, not a sense of grayness, dullness. That's why we all come to these teachings originally, right? We feel a dullness, we feel a sloth, lethargy of life. We feel bored. Nothing wrong with that, because if we really consider the life today, it feels boring and it feels not special. So this is a good indicator that we know we are moving towards our being a little bit when we start to come out of that mechanical feeling of being in the mundane, being bored. But actually we start to feel the vibrancy of life. We start to take breaths. We start to just be present. How often are we really present? with ourselves. Usually, you have to be quite a strong person to be very happy and very secure just with yourself. A lot of people have this, insecurity or loneliness. That's a great foundation to build yourself, to be alone and feel that and transmute that. And then also, how often are we very present with others, our loved ones, our families? It's usually only until family members die that we realize, I was never really there for that person, or I was never really present for that person. But when we're really present, and we just sit, we're not thinking anything, and we just give attention to that person. That's love, right? You could even not be present for a person and still believe that you love them, because you're acting from a mechanical love. But love isn't about necessarily saying I love you, or or just declaring it, or emotions, but it's the actions and it's the attention given, right? Being present, creating space for that person. Of course, that ties into our Gnostic principle of sacrifice in the three factors. So sacrifice your own ego. So if you have thoughts now about your own life, how you could do that, or maybe there are thoughts inside saying, I can't do this or that, and people always complain or say, I can't do this because of that, or it's very difficult to achieve this because of that. Well, we have the teaching of sacrifice. Kill it. Completely renounce it. Don't identify with it. As long as you're identified with a voice, you'll never be able to get rid of it. You have to create the detachment in yourself and say, the other beautiful phrase by Master Samael, I am not this. I'm not this. I'm my being, not the voices. I'm not the negative emotions that are drowning me. So, in a sense, we're all trying to build a rocket ship, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm building my rocket ship, and I'm going to go to space and live there, but not externally. Maybe one day that would be great. After many years, I've achieved it internally. We want to build our rocket ship. And so, you need to build a rocket ship. What do you need? You need lots of money. A lot. You need to be like the very rich billionaires who are creating rockets now, like that. But not materially, right? We really need money. Spiritual money. Not to be a beggar. Not to be a poor person. What does a poor person look like in the internal worlds? Looks something like a zombie. They're dying, they got disease, and they're not very kind people. They're just zombie, or like a vampire. They just want to suck someone, Rich person is full of kindness, generosity, peace. They're present, they're happy, because they worked for that, and they earned that. So that's why we say enlightenment is earned. It's not just given. So to generate this spiritual currency, and without saying the details, I've had several experiences of me being shown my spiritual currency. It's a very particular, it's a defined feeling. It's something that you can really perceive internally. Yes. Your own spiritual bank account, you could say. How much you have inside. So, of course, karma is our debts. It's the things that we have borrowed from the internal banks. And, well, these banks are not owned by the White Lodge. They're owned by the Black Lodge. We are in debt to the world of the black magic, of this world, of the same world that I've just described in the beginning. That We have this very strong sense, which is nobody is able to sense without meditation, without deep, heart-centered meditation, that we have fallen into identification with the material world very intensely. And that each of us has our own mechanical, mental images and emotions that we go through every day without really being present. Even Gnostic students who have been practicing self-observation for many years, many of them say that, I'm practicing self-observation and I'm remembering myself, but it's just not working and all of this. They're assuming that they know self-observation and self-remembrance. They've forgotten the practice. They started doing it mechanically. It's so strong. That's my point is, even when we know these facts about life, it's so strong, the feeling, and it even infects our spiritual studies and practices. So, what do? We have to generate our own dharma. Dharma, we could say that the White Lodge doesn't give out debts. It just gives out freebies. Everything's free. That's why when you come to Gnostic teachings, it's all free. Don't ask for money, because the White Lodge doesn't charge money. And it's the same internally. When you start working for the White Lodge, which also exists, remember, in you. It's the most purest part of you that can help you. The angels, the masters, all of the divinity and all of the religions of what they speak about, it's in there. And when you start listening to that and obeying that by doing the practices, doing self-observation, sacrifice, transmuting our sexual energy, practicing chastity, to be pure in our words, in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our dreams at night, and then we more align ourselves with a life that we sense we would like to have. Not in a egoic way, but in a bhakti way. Bhakti. This is an Indian term for the spiritual ambition, which is a positive thing. It's not egoic ambition, but it's the fire. Bhakti is fire. The devotion, yes. The devotion to be with God, be with divinity. Nothing wrong with that sense of fire. Nothing wrong with that sense of will. We should make that bigger, actually. And we should be more zealous and more willed and more like a warrior. We actually, almost impossible to do the practices and everything that we need to do, that we feel in our heart that we should do, without feeling like a warrior a bit, because it takes will. We have to fight. Again, as I said in the beginning, this sense of identification with the material world, and not just the material world, but primarily the dreams that we go through, is very strong. It takes will, a lot of will, to create that tension between you, the essence, and all the egoic forms. Once that space, that tension that you create, that electricity that you create, is created between you, the essence, and the egos and the attachments, it's much easier to see. And then it's much easier to let go of a lot of ego. So tension, this electricity, it comes more with transmutation too, sexual transmutation. Because it's not like a lot of teachings give or unconsciously give. The path and this kind of development is not just mental. It's not like we're just cleaning. It's not like we all just have a little bubble inside our head and that we just make it clear. No, it's the whole body. We have to eventually purify the whole body the soul is not just something invisible, but that our body, our physical body, should be an expression of that too. That's why human bodies is beautiful. It was, as it says in the Bible, it was made in the image of God. Beautiful. It's perfect. But the thing that is controlling it is just a bit fallen and identified with the material. So we have to look after our bodies too. And not just, sometimes we think that it's the body's fault, but it's not. We do have to look after it. Some people can become too, well, as you know, the fakir, the path of the fakir, right? Whipping oneself, or people who stay in one position for like too long and then they can't move their body, or even fasting. Fasting is good, recommended, but too much, some people do it in a self-afflicting way. So we have to look after ourselves too. But this is more comprehended when we go to sleep at night, or why we sleep for so many hours in life, because the egos that enter the body are damaging for this sacred vehicle. And when we go to sleep, those egos escape the physical body. There's no physical senses. That's why there's no memory. And the body can heal itself during the night. So, we have to create our own Dharma. And we do that through all of the practices that we know, but also there's an intuitive sense about all of this, which is, how do I know, it's a common question, how do I know what sacrifices to make, what egos to dissolve? And we may sit here and already identify certain egos that we know later on when we go home. We might be attacked, we might be possessed. Ego is very mechanical. Tick, tick, tick. It's like a clock. At night, we have certain egos. Middle of the night, certain egos. In the morning, certain egos. Different egos. So there's a certain sense of anticipation. That's why in the great book, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, know your enemy. Right? If you want to overcome your enemy, you need to know it. So my point is, if you want to know what practices you need to do, of course there's meditation, transmutation, helping others, but more specifically, you just have to be very present. And essentially, if you try to be present all day, you'll see your ego coming in. And what I mean by being present, it goes back to that feeling of free from the mundane. You start to sense the sacredness of life. You start to feel the love of life and a certain spiritual happiness. Okay, stay with divinity, stay with God in that way. Try to do it all day. Of course, it's like a line, perfect balance. No, not so crazy happy, not so miserable or something. Just perfect line. Peace. Om. Right? And then you get so fascinated. And then, you have to remember yourself. Or you feel negativities. Come back to the middle line. Always a sense of balance. That's the path. And then when it's going up and down, you'll know that those are your egos. Those are your psychological patterns that are pushing you from the center. And it's like a spiritual vertigo of the soul that you'll sense, to this dizziness that you're trying to go always to the middle path. Of course, certain things in our life are required in the meantime, such as some work, career, everything like that. And we're not saying that to be materially ambitious is a bad thing. It's okay. However, the important thing is not to be identified with it. Someone could say, I would love to be this great person in this so-and-so profession, but they don't know what life holds for them. And if they identify with that and attach to that, then, and it doesn't happen, then they'll create a lot of suffering. If that suffering wasn't there and that attachment wasn't there, they won't understand that something else was in store for them in life, their true calling, their true purpose. So, to go back to what I said in the beginning, there's this very subtle sense. Even when you close your eyes, you start to see the images of your own life, the egos, the memories, ambitions, pain, attachments, identifications, all the illusions of our own life. When you open your eyes, there is at least a groundedness, a place where you can concentrate a bit. So that's why we say sometimes in meditation, if you feel that when you close your eyes there's too many images, meditate with your eyes open. Maybe have something, some beautiful symbols or statues or candle, just to help you be grounded. Then when you're good at concentrating, you can start to close your eyes and look within. Or a mantra, something to concentrate on. But it's not very good it's not very efficient to close our eyes and meditate and just fly off in the winds of the ego, right? So, again, this sense of the spiritual winds of identifications, of materialisms, memory, ego. And then there is the actual path of walking the path and making efforts. One force is going outwards into the cosmic energies of life, going outwards into the noise, the general noise and winds of life. The other one is more internal. It's more still. It's more peaceful. There's more clarity. We start to get insights. We start to feel happy. We start to sense an inner atmosphere that is not the atmosphere of the spiritual winds of life, the noise. Me and my wife yesterday, we were on the beach. It was overcrowded. And I said, if you want to know what the noise of the ego is, just listen. It's like that. Too much noise. But the inward path is more silent and there is more space. If we can get there, but just to get there, we have to let go of our grip from the external. Let go, let go, let go. Take a huge step back. When NASA landed on the moon and said this is a great leap for mankind, well, we have to take that leap, but internally. We have to take a huge leap backwards and retrace our steps psychologically, emotionally, but not an intellectual thing. Just observe, just be and see. Of course, more esoterically, more mystically, more towards the Gnostic science and the Indian science, we could say, or Hindu science. This relates in a beautiful way of how we could comprehend it towards the chakras, the kundalini, the sexual transmutation. The reason why that pull towards the external world is so strong, we could also call it lust. Even a person who says they're not so lustful, but they're very identified with the physical world, well, in a sense, they've still already sexually fallen, because their primal root force energy, which animates them to exist and to have life, is given to the external. And everything here is temporary. It doesn't last. Whatever is built physically doesn't last. When we die, we can't take it with us. We could build a rocket ship externally. We need to have that rocket ship built internally, that when we die, we can still fly and have freedom. So, that rocket ship, we could say, starts from the base of the spine and goes upwards. So, it starts with the root chakra, right? Exoterically, that relates to being grounded in this physical reality. So many people are very concerned with opening their third eye, mainly that one, right? But they're not even here in the physical reality, in the root chakra, to just be, not even hearing the sounds. Some people will sit in an area and you'll say, wow, do you hear that? I'm like, no. And then they give attention because they're not even, their mind is so loud and they're not even using the faculties of the physical body. We have to be here, awake. So generally, as a single, we can harness the sexual energy, transmute it, and we can get flashes of light of the Kundalini. Well, being a single is a bit like being a caterpillar. What does a caterpillar need to do in order to transform? It needs to germinate in the cocoon. We need to gather all that sexual essence that we've put out into the world, all our ambitions and identifications, gather it and bring it up and create a cocoon around us. And then the years of transformation will take place in that cocoon. Of course, it's much more easier, much more powerful and faster when it is done through the teachings of White Tantra, through sexual alchemy. And then that energy goes up, we get to the sacral chakra, we start to understand our desires, a sense of pleasure in the world, not in a lustful or egoic way, but the pleasure that we are entitled to as a human being. Then we get to the solar plexus, we start to sense our own personal power in the world, a sense of will, of what we are meant to do in this world and what we're meant to do with ourselves. And then, of course, we get to the heart, the temple of the heart. We start to experience love. We start to really get into our center. Those three bottom chakras are very related to the ego. If our lust is strong, if our ambitions are strong, it's hard to remain in that center. So our identifications with that, as I said before, we can see our egos, but there's a difference between seeing it and being identified with it. You could say that seeing it and being identified with it is more dangerous than not seeing it. You have to be strong to see the egos. That's why there is a process of initiation. That we have to be ready and be prepared to see our ego and not be identified. Because if we're not identified, if we're true, we could say, we can make affirmations, I'm not identified with this. But of course, we just say that because we're already identified. Yeah. So when we see the ego, we have to make efforts to feel truly not identified. Yes. And then later on, we start to get in touch with the throat. We start to hear the spiritual atmosphere of life. And then we get to the third eye. We start to see much more clearly the reality. And then the crown is to do with knowledge or omniscience. Not omniscience in the sense of an encyclopedia, but in a sense of direct knowing of things, direct wisdom. So, that's the message for today. Build your own rocket ship and focus more on the rocket ship internally. Whatever ambitions, whatever things and dreams that we feel we need to do, these career, even all kind of like self-development, or we have courses that we attend, it's all fine, but the important thing is not to be identified with it. If we're not identified with it, then we're living in ourself then. And we're just sitting and observing. But if we are identified with it, we believe that we're going to get something that we're probably not going to receive. And we're putting our hope in the external. We're putting our hope in the material. And this is the opposite of the Gnostic philosophy. Not just in the Gnosis of Samael Aun Weor, but the Gnosis of the Gnostics of ancient Gnostic Christianity. That they essentially, in academic or historical terms, officially, they believe that the material is evil, right? Not exactly, but in a sense, or from what we've been saying here, yes. Don't give your heart and soul to the external, because it's all temporary. If you can build something internally, your virtues, the powers of your own soul, this is what stays with you. It stays with you. And in order to create that, well, you know the teachings. Or everyone in Gnosis knows exactly what they need to do, right? I find it funny sometimes when students ask, what do I need to do? What kind of routine do I need to do? What practices? Well, hey, go look in the mirror and ask yourself. Because you know. Don't act ignorant. Don't act like a little child who doesn't know, you know. Like sometimes children will lie to their parents about their responsibilities that they want to avoid or something. But internally, we all know exactly what we need to do. And if we follow that intuitive path, that direction, then it doesn't matter, we shouldn't think about what we receive, because we should have faith that whatever we receive from that internally, the level of being that will come through that is going to fulfill us, because we are following that way. And this applies to the most smallest thing, the smallest things in life. For example, I know with my mother, she's like, I grew up as a bit of a rebellious teenager, and I got into the habit of, you know, when she calls me, I just ignore her. I talk to her, not as a good son would talk to her, you know. And even while in Gnosis, you know, I'm so focused in Gnosis, and someone's distracting me on my phone, and you know, the smallest things have to be are opportunities to create that tension, to create the inner space to see. The smallest things. We know in our heart what to do to be pure, to be good, and to do, in our conscience, we know the right things to do. If someone is difficult to deal with, we know exactly what's the best thing to do if we follow our intuition. But of course, there's the very strong egoic force of, it's like some words want to come out that we want to say, and we're trying to hold it, and we just say it. But if we really have the force and the strength and the faith that I'm going to practice restraint, and I'm going to hold my tongue, and I'm going to do what I know is right, I'm going to obey my internal divinity, then we start to create a real power for ourselves. real spiritual power. It's difficult in the beginning, but if you practice the sacrifice, then later on you'll comprehend. One of the first steps of yoga or of meditation, restraint. Stop all the negativities. And it creates this electricity. It takes a lot of practice in the beginning. But when it's done, well, it's done, right? As we said near the beginning, the external is a manifestation of the internal. If you keep having a certain people giving you the same negativities and you have the same reactions, you will have that for the rest of your life. Guaranteed, almost. Probably. And even in the afterlife, because it's mechanical. We are trapped in the mechanicity of it. That is the definition of hell. That's why it's said, hell is eternal suffering. Because it continues until it's liberated. Of course, here we know the keys to liberate. We just need to do it. Any questions?
I had something in mind. It's like, when you say like meditation, it's hard to meditate. But it's like I found an easy way to learn meditation. It is while you're suffering. Because when we're suffering, we're in pain, in anger, frustration, so much emotion. And internally inside, we are boiled like a hot water into 100%. Or maybe more than that. And then just like you imagine, you have this the energy, the sense of it, and even your internal being would help you to help you. So when you, in that moment when you like meditate, it is easy to learn meditation, because all you want to do is to be at peace and let go of all the things inside yourself and everything that you go through. And I think it's a good way, good path, because it's like, imagine, transmuting your 100% negativity into something good.
Yeah. That relates to the traditional Gnostic Christian belief of that the external world is evil. Yeah, sure. But it's a necessary manifestation of the ego that we need to face. It's very useful. And that's why we have the teachings of the psychological gym of life. That if we find ourselves in a very difficult and limiting situation, we're very poor, we have so many people that are bringing us negativity and problems, actually, well, of course, if we have the strength to do it and if we have the will, it's the best for meditation. It's the best for building this foundation of spiritual strength and power. If you have the will to do it, of course. That's why we said the other day that eventually, on the path, you will be given internally a sword, which symbolizes your ability or your achievement to have your own will against all of the pressures and the negativities of the external world. Have a sword. No evil will come against me. Of course, we're not pointing it to anyone internally, but the mental creatures that are inside us. So that's why, what is the most valuable mineral in the world? The most precious stone, right? Diamond. The mineral kingdom represents the hell kingdoms, the lower kingdoms. And when we are under a lot of pressure in the mineral kingdom and we succeed, diamonds are created, virtues. So this is an encouragement too. If we listen to this with our ego, we will get discouraged. But if we comprehend it, we will get encouraged. Some people think they have a big ego. Yeah, whatever. Everyone does. But the good thing to know is that actually the bigger the ego, okay, the bigger the effort it's going to create to kill it. However, you have a bigger diamond than other people, basically. Trying to say that in a non-egoic way, of course. But the diamond is going to be bigger and more bountiful, more dharma. It's natural that when someone is very, very low, if they truly change, truly awaken and revolutionize their consciousness, they will affect humanity much more positively than just the average person who hasn't fallen a lot. Of course, don't take that into your ego and think, oh, so if I fall a lot and then I'll do the path, I'll climb later. No, of course, it's the more we fall, the more difficult it is to get up. Maybe almost impossible to get back up. Well, that's the situation we're in. We're already fallen and it's been lifetimes, thousands of years. It's time to get up, time to wake up and create that force that goes inwards and upwards.